22. It's weird. I've had the number 222 in my life so many times today. And yesterday, 222, it's 1222, which means my mom's not going to contact me. So I'm well ahead of schedule. And I had something somewhat fearful go through my aura on the right side. And as I'm relieving myself of stresses that I've endured, it might seem trivial to some people, but involved, in this case, a female who routinely sort of held me paralyzed while going about a constant nattering about her life. Positively so, excited though. And going through this and saying how glad I am, because it shocked me that just to not have this person come up to me anymore. I couldn't stop shopping at that place. If I were to sit down and say, Mom, do you really want to know why I don't shop? It's because this experience, these experiences, if I just had someone with me, I've experienced this one when I'm with my mom. And it's like, it's endurable. If you have two people as a team listening to her, because then she has an audience. When you're by yourself in public and she's going on and on, I felt humiliated. It's like, what am I letting this woman do? And it's like my aura just sort of changed. I took a few breaths, and then like a positive energy started to course around my body, like, oh, you've said it out loud. You're being true to your fear. You're being true to your stresses. You're being congruent. People had walked by, and the young man and woman were okay, but the older women were all a little excited. It's just one of those days, And they were on the right side of me, on the right side of my aura. I just sustained kind of like a sense of unwanted energy from women. And so that's interesting, the right side, which in some sense, I think my side of my body is the most feminine side of my body. So it's the most compatible with women, right? And the abstract, my abstract sense of what a man is, I would say, is in the energy level of the right side of my body. So if they were looking at me the wrong way and they had not to me about what I was as a man and what I was to them, that's where I was experiencing a bit of a fearful shimmer. Like there was nothing else really to really affect me in reality except how those women were actually energetically toward me. Like, isn't that interesting? Just different older white people who weren't making the best eye contact with me. Isn't that interesting? And what that brings up, okay, and that's useful. So again, it's another strange thing today. And now that fear is settled, and because I'm talking about these things all the time, you wouldn't believe, right, to stay in on that level, how difficult the range of things I get from women. Just that example, the young man, the young woman, their boyfriend, girlfriend, this was probably their family, they're following behind them, and it's like, they're giving looks like they're a bit coy, they're smiling, in a way that they can't contain themselves, because they're excited. I'm not excited. They're not in a modest state of mind. Themselves go. They're, as I say about women like this, you're revealing everything you would. And doesn't feel good. If you were a woman and men walked by and you were having these types of gleeful looks on their faces, you wouldn't feel very comfortable either. And in getting into primal things about what is disturbed about that's gotten between me and my mother, and then to walk through that like the deer, and to walk home to my mother, who's going to call me in an hour and a half and say she's picking me up, let's say, or not. If I get 2 rings, I'm going to walk home. But look at this. There's a nice wind. We're going to sit down over here somewhere and have a break, take a pee. And the fear just went away. It's amazing. It's just, and the sun wants to come out again, I'm sure. And it's just like, isn't that something? When it was momentary, there's other fears connected to it, and then I figured out what it was, and it culminated with what appears unwanted energy. So what that tells me is that I'm very sensitive to unwanted sexual energy from women, whether it's a level of excitement, fear, the children today, curiosity, something that cannot be contained. When you give the opposite sex an energy that shows you can't contain yourself, What does that tell them? It was the energy that is happening. Yeah. So that's the level of the energy you can get from the opposite sex that says, I can't contain myself, can be seen as, to me, sexual harassment. And we're not locating as a legal crime or something. We're locating this sense of sexual harassment or assault, let's say, in the realm of, you've made me feel uncomfortable. And I don't think you should be able to do that. Even if you can't control yourself, even if this seems like a kind of cutesy sort of moment for you, even though you don't see men that make you feel this way every day, because as you get older, you don't feel that way all the time. And it's kind of nice, right? To feel young again. And that man looks handsome, and he makes me feel young again. And he's making me smile, and it's not a big deal. But my aura told the story. Same side of my body, abstract level of my brain. It's like, you don't have the right idea about men. You don't have any real idea. It's fine to get excited, but know how that could possibly make me feel. If you're a man and you meet a younger woman, whether she's 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, or 50, and you feel that way about them, understand that they can feel extremely uncomfortable, even though you may never know it. And my aura just processed it. It's like, of everything else I have to deal with, and then it also kind of located my fear in the moment. Here I am talking about my abstract feelings. You notice I'm not being angry at these women. I'm just like, they weren't malicious. But that's all it took to make it. And now, that's it. I'm done. I can go home to my mom. And how many times today on video have I said, I'm uncomfortable? Girls talking to me, children talking about me, right? A man went by, didn't want to say hello to me. Not a big deal in the great scheme of it all, but pattern, the woman with the dog who seemed to have cornered me in the bushes after I'd already moved to one side. Who eliminated and made me scared, not in the same way, but somehow had eliminated in her life a sense of me as my mother's son, somebody's child. If you're a man, you're looking at young girls, right? And you think maybe I shouldn't be doing that. Except to say, oh, okay, I could see why, you could see that attractive if you were 16 years old. And you think yourself, there's somebody's daughter. They have a mother. And despite all of the excitement from the wonderful whirling world of human sex, emotion, lowered inhibitions, and work, and rubbing up against each other in all kinds of strangely chemical, intimate ways, there is yet a sanctity that you might like to honor about the fact that this person has feelings. Really, they don't want to have sex. They're out and about. In a way, being sexual for anyone could basically be an armor. Maybe young girls, we don't know, dress in a sexy fashion to protect themselves like a costume. And you understand that especially younger people are probably more prone to try different costumes. There was one girl I was walking by, it was about 7 or 8, but the one at the end was showing her cleavage, and she had a lot of it. And I didn't stare at her or anything. It's like, wow. And you can feel like, okay, definitely not looking in that direction. Because of course it's going to attract a man's gaze. And it's like, picture it as a costume she's wearing because she's at school, she's outside, she's not at home, she's not in her safest place. Imagine anyone outside or not in their safest place. Certainly don't touch them when they're in their safest place. If they're invited into their home, obviously. I know you don't need to hear this, but let's just say for those that do. But remember, outside, I'm by myself. I don't want to be touched either. I'm somebody's son. I could be 50, I'm somebody's son, I'm somebody's friend. I have feelings. I'm not a sexual object. I don't want to be a sexual object to anybody. That doesn't feel good. Think to yourself, if you're 60 or 70, is that really feasible? Do you think I'm going to call you tonight? So going with my feelings, feeling uncomfortable having my feelings, feeling insecure about becoming someone who's going to have nothing but these feelings about the opposite sex. And though I might be smart enough to explore various philosophical spheres and emotional spheres and unfortunate drifts in human culture, gender, and economics, and whatnot, it still just feels bad, and I'd rather not feel that way. And so I build a lot of my theories out of a lot of the ways I feel. And so today I've talked about a lot of things that could seem very surreal, and yet there's been actually some very clear evidence of, if nothing else, behavior which I would rather not have, to such a degree that it seems preferable to me to live in a world where I didn't get that behavior, and not in a world that encouraged it. Wherever the world might encourage, or not sufficiently discourage behavior that I happen to selfishly feel terrifies me, and as much as any young girl could be terrified by the unwanted energy or smile of an older man at any time, especially if she's by herself or at all, then I think the world could change. Something might be wrong with the world, with society. Something could be wrong with society, and chemically wrong about people who serve society. The very nature of anxiety, people like me or someone who's very anxious, can feel continually like something bad is going to happen, or feel a certain way, even worse, because something bad has happened, is happening, maybe right now to me, and is going to happen in the future. I'm not economically secure. I've never had a stable relationship with a female. I live with my mother, and I fear being rejected by her. I fear her anger, her wrath. I fear incurring unsoundness in her life, and I take on somewhat of the insinuation that I have done, in some sense, done that, while at the same time helped to cure my mom of alcoholism and sustained a lot of abuse along the way. I don't think that pays the rent, but I do think that remaining true to my healing needs and true to myself is a good thing to do. And I really want to make sure I give my mother her due, and she feels comfortable telling me what she needs, and making sure that life stays as easy as possible for her, and that my labors, as difficult as they are for me, fearful. I've never been so afraid in my life, more anxiety in my life, about things that might go on a bit more in the future. And I sit out here, you don't really have the reasons you think to be anxious. But when you're anxious, it's amazing how anything that sticks will stick in your mind. I'm sure I've been anxious that a planet was going to hit us. It's amazing how the mind can indeed, the danger you would feel that I'm always keenly sensible of, and more so as I've learned different experiences, cults, if you will, of the mind, like popular conspiracy. Doesn't mean they're wrong, but it's something belonging onto something and needing someone to tell me, hey, look, that's not rational, and here's how we know. Not to say I'm a stupid this, but just, I'm finding, like, oh, took a lot of courage each day to do something this week. I won't tell you what it is. It took a lot of courage. I did something with great courage. It took more courage than I realized. Now that I think about it, my fear is also telling me of my courage. It's like it took incredible courage. Had some weed. I didn't buy some weed today. I could have. Didn't feel like it. Do it tomorrow. It's a plane taking me. So by the time I get to the end of this trail, it's going to be just after 1. And yeah, so I hope I will continue to talk for some days about my tremendous dread and the different ways that I now need to learn what it means, what it's telling me, that it makes it feel bad that it exists at all. It doesn't seem like the most entertaining thing to put on YouTube, to say, oh, I'm incredibly afraid, so much I can't even completely tell you why. Like that, I'm going to take you through maybe whatever experiences I encounter while doing something fairly innocuous, walking, and here's a walking stick I probably left here from eons ago. Let's take that. I'll take the old walking stick for a while. What do you think? That'll be a nice little comforting thing. Thank you. And then, it's really something. I thought about this lady when I went into a depression clinic. She was one of the nicest people there, and she did the meditation to release all of your fears. And she was just like really good at what she did. It's like, it was actually my favorite little activity that they had. I wish they'd had it like twice a day. I'm surprised they didn't have it more. There wasn't a lot of people there. It's like, what the hell does this woman do with her time? It's like I prepared this lesson today. Breathing. Strange place, a mental health ward in a hospital. Probably one of the safest places you could be. I mean, better to have a mental illness than a wad of tissue up your ass. But speaking of cancer, you don't have to get it. If you do, just allow your body to get rid of crap. That's my advice to you. And angry every day is a good way. A little angry, or in my case, terrified and angry. Dark, deep, difficult emotions that can become, at worst, or even at best, project the world in surreal ways, either because you're wrong or because you'll change in how you feel about these things when you're not in such a dire state of mind, or because things that force you to do that allow you to approach levels of human violence, though it might not be particular this moment, like someone's going to mug you. It is something nonetheless that is pointing a gun at you. In that doom is to be had by those who aren't sufficiently wise as to what's coming your way. And not because, tanks are going to roll into your town, although that has happened often enough, but because not enough of this and too much of this, the things that you won't even think are all that big a deal until you start looking at what happens when there's too much of that and too little of this. And there's a reason to think human behavior a bit peculiar and worse, as we've managed to enroll it in various group-related activities throughout the human industrial eras. And as George Carlin once said, the problem with the world is groups of people. And when I heard that, having said the same thing to myself before I ever heard him say that on Charlie Rose, I thought, there you go. And that's a guy who would know because he's part of the system, right? He's an actor on stage of history. And they're smart people. And I think he's Michael Kahn as well. Something like that. Not Michael Caine, something Kahn, an actor. Anyway, these people are lots of people. And so 12:22 is probably like getting close to 12:45, and then take an hour and 15 minutes till my mom hopefully calls me, and then a half hour from there she'll pick me up. So that allows me to go down to this river. Have some nice time down there. But yeah, your fears could be such projected out into the world that what is surreal takes you into sort of an intertidal zone where certain, if not immediately lethal, but nonetheless a remarkably range of persuasiveness over human behavior and thought about any number of things. Okay? And it's not like there's something productive in saying, hey, everyone's a slave and you're all controlled by an evil wheel of Kolob, but that if you have some sense of, how humans live and contrive to live and hope to live and are forced to live in the world, that you have some range of consideration precisely the opposite of that people do have a will of their own, and they do have a mind of their own, and we should be able to decide different things, how we live, if it doesn't work for us. And anyone who can imagine any way that the world is working for any number or all people, even if it's just a part of life or a chronic condition, or if it's something surreal that we have yet to imagine, because it has had such an unfortunate influence over the human mind that to come across it seems surreal. If you've been abused, all of a sudden you start thinking about it, it seems surreal. You might write in a journal one day, my blah 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 touched me inappropriately. I'm like, no, that doesn't seem right. But it changes your world because it's true, and so a lot of trauma and shock seems surreal, and then it can help us bring a new order of sobriety to the. Maybe it doesn't seem that positive to other people, but we see, it's had negative effects and it's had positive effects. Nothing's ever been as negative to me as other people. Finally, I would have nothing to talk about if people didn't hurt me, right? I'd have nothing to write about or negative about if I'd never been hurt, and no one ever hurt me, and I could walk around and be like, wow, all these friendly, wonderful people who always treat me with such respect, and they never make me feel uncomfortable, because that would be silly, right? Women can be made uncomfortable, but not single white men. And if you're attractive, well, less so. You're compliant, placid, submissive. That old man had a very ugly look on his face, but you have to realize that certain men get to a certain age and they are quite aggressive or angry a lot, and their resting face is actually quite exaggerated. He's grimacing because he's probably really tired as well. He's riding his bike. But yeah, unfortunate looks from older people. I didn't take any ill. I was just like, oh, well, there's another beautiful face. Doesn't look very happy to see me. So, at least I look people in the eyes. Hello, nice breeze. So, yeah, I'm gonna look my thoughts on it. Boy, it's hard. I like most of the videos I've made today, but you could probably skip them all. I'm sure most people would happy never hear them all, and I probably won't upload them. It's just like your today. Good ideas though, and I'll carry them with me. I do, and then find new versions. The main thing is, though, for me not to make videos, to make resounding points about how deadly the world is, but to encourage myself to improve my sense of safety. Because if anything is making me feel that way, I should try to change it. That's why we can all agree to that. And I understand that a lot of the things that I do and how I align my life just take a lot of time. Like I brought myself out of a lot of shock. I've taken myself out of a lot of difficult situations. My home just is now a completely safe place, and seems to want to continue to be so. My building is becoming safer. Women I think are appropriate to be in my environment, and people who I think are probably not good for my mother leave. She before a creepy lady called, and before another lady called, and my mom is friendly with her, but at least she's in another country, you know. And I don't want to say to my mom, like, when you talk to her and you say, but you notice that she's only ever talking about herself, and it's just, there's so many people who can do that. They can just talk about themselves, and they have everything. Yes, I got a house, and my mom is just listening like an obedient dog, telling me, oh yeah, and she's friendly, but there's a sort of unseemliness about it. I don't think she's the worst woman in the world. I just think that, in the most generous sense, it just shows people they do hard jobs that I don't do, and it makes them a bit rougher than they think. They work in very arduous conditions. They see, and they do things that aren't nice, and that's it. I've met young nurses, I've met some nice nurses in my life that I've known, but I also think they often have to tend to kind of aggressive leaning to them. A lot of these services in Canada and other countries require a certain amount of loyalty to systems of thinking and magical thinking and faith. There's no not trying to be too unseemly. Most human, professional, social, and sexual associations require a good deal of magical thinking, commensurate with or to help to endure the either satisfyingly or not so satisfyingly parasitical, debt-laden, often very deceptive, dark, and cold arenas of human, industrial behavior and work, and living by this. Obviously, we don't have to live with this debt and this inflation and these banks. There's a lot of things that could be tweaked, right? Not just methamphetamines. Just kidding. So I don't know a lot about economics, but all I know is that it's a completely unnecessary heel on the side of human beings. The whole point of it is to exert a imponderable range of unnecessary cost to human life, and to teach you to be as thankful as possible for whatever you can convince yourself you're getting in return, right? For the loyalty and suspension of disbelief and magical thinking that it takes, and why wouldn't it, to kind of put this kind of stuff out of your mind every day you go to work, and to hope that the dollars that you're earning will be enough to convert the love your children feel quite reliably that you have for them, since the one they have for you is quite reliable, and they wouldn't have been born without it, and you wouldn't have become a father or mother without it, is somehow convertible into money. And the time you spend away from them and that they spend away from you will be converted into money, and they'll be so thankful they got to spend all that time away from you, and that you worked so hard and became this and that kind of person, grew up and they didn't need their mommy and daddy anymore. And here's everything you can do to kind of make up for any difficulties you have about that, and whatever you do, work hard, And every show you see is seeking surrogate families who don't have mothers or fathers or anyone but their boss and other people who work for them. It's all over the place. Where are the parents? Where are the parents? Going on a gay cruise around the South Pole? I don't know. Right? It's all very odd. Seinfeld, popular show. But what is the relationship of these people to any of their mothers and fathers? Not. Do they have any other family? No. Brothers and sisters? No. Nothing. How come, we have shows that don't even have any families? They don't seem to have sustained any Sex in the City. What? Is this real? Remember, TV doesn't have to be real, is it? That's the great thing about it. So if it doesn't have to be real, and it isn't real, why are we so absorbed with it? Because it has real effects upon our brain. that, whether you like it or not, make us feel like this is the real world. This is the real world. And if the real world is one where the parents are kind of gone and everyone's having fun and getting into sexual hijinks, then what the hell? Maybe it's time we just accepted it and enjoyed the fact that everyone in the world is enjoying these TV shows, because in some sense they're quite realistic. That's exactly what makes them funny. The fact that every character always lies as a first solution to every problem. It's kind of funny, isn't it? It's very capable. Any TV show, there's a problem, character lies. There's a problem, character lies. Lies to a child, lies to their spouse, lies to themselves, lies to anyone and everyone. Always a lie, always a lie. Right, always a lie. No one ever tells the truth. Young girls, you can see on these shows, they trying to get things by lying, being aggressive, assuming things about people, you know, always for their own good, of course. Always to protect them. This one show, they're debating with themselves whether to tell a very young girl, 3 or 4 years old, that her fish had died and they replaced it with another goldfish and just called it the same thing. When they finally do, she says, "Oh, can I flush it down the toilet?" Why? Because that's what we do all the time in daycare, preschool. As soon as the fish and fish tank, we get to flush it down the toilet, and they really like flushing it down the toilet. So not only is the child not upset, but she's become a bit of a sadist. And then kind of humorous little ceremony outside because the fish has been planted in the ground. And now she's just putting the grass there because they taught her a new ceremony. But is that ceremony worth anything than tossing it in the toilet and watching it go away? One seemingly to honor the sanctity of the other because it's just fun to do. Have you really made that distinction in her mind? Are they concerned about it? At first they're concerned about telling her. Oh, now they find out that she's actually inured to defiling the corpse of a loved one. Right? The reason they don't want to tell her is they're attached to the fish. They seem to love the fish. And of course, children aren't expected to know these things, but you are. And as you're watching, you're lowering your inhibitions and going, well, they eventually did have a funeral and everything worked out fine because, you know, kids will do anything. And where is she learning to kill all these fishes routinely? Fishes that are bound to die during the preschool season? At preschool. Hello.